Welcome to the Steelers Breakdown Podcast with PennLive's Steelers beat reporter Nick Farabaugh, who is fresh from putting in some overtime into the wee hours of Monday morning to cover that Steelers letdown to the Dallas Cowboys. And of course, that game didn't finish until the wee hours of Monday because lightning flashed, thunder cracked, and the rain poured down on Acrisure Stadium. But the Steelers short-circuited on both offense and defense, and especially in coaching for this game. So it leaves, I can just imagine Steelers Nation, collectively, Steelers Nation, sometime after 1 a.m., bleary-eyed, booze-addled, and pushing the panic button in unison because the coordinators have changed on offense and defense. The quarterbacks have come and gone. But the result, especially with an anemic 225 yards on offense, remained the same. Dallas was able to drive down, despite trying to give the game away, 3 turnovers, drive down when it counted. The Steelers on money downs, pick your Tomlinism. Money downs, they came up with chump change. The weighty downs, they were lightweights. The same old story, but of course, the big story, 2 big storylines coming out of the Mike Tomlin press conference that Nick just attended is, of course, George Pickens. We saw him on tape, not running routes. He had sort of that weird face mask, unsportsmanlike penalty there, and counting the snaps that he's on the field is way down. And Tomlin is sticking with the story of its load management. And to me, as an answer, we're going to get Nick's opinion and analysis of that in a minute. But to me, that sounds like waste management. Let's put that in the trash because that doesn't answer the question of what's going on with George Pickens. And the other one is Tomlin saying at the press conference that we're in the neighborhood. We're in the right neighborhood on offense. Well, I haven't seen a neighborhood of make-believe like that since Mr. Rogers, who was doing his show out of Pittsburgh. So I don't know what to make of that. And then Tomlin is leaving the door ajar ever so slightly for Russell Wilson waiting in the wings. We saw him waiting on the sideline during that Sunday nighter. So there's a lot to talk about, Nick. I want you to just, first of all, are you here? I'm sure on your social media, because you're very active on social media, hearing the panic out of Pittsburgh. What's the psyche? What's the psyche in Pittsburgh on radio, where you're on the radio a lot too as well? So yeah, give us the perspective coming out of that drenched debacle of a game.
Oh, there's definitely some panic and worry about multiple aspects of the team. There's no doubt about that. I don't think it's quite time to hit the panic button just yet. I will say if they lose to the Raiders, this should be a win for the Steelers. They should beat this Raiders team, period. They should. I don't care that they've beaten the Ravens. They should win this game. So if you lose 3 in a row and lose in the circumstances you did, right? Indianapolis Richardson got hurt in the first quarter, was down. Their star defensive tackle was down 2 of their top 4 edge rushers. Dallas was down their top 4 edge rushers and one of their top corners and one of their top wide receivers. And it just like that, these are not good losses for the Steelers to take because both those games were very winnable games. And we know we have talked all year about the back end of the schedule is so hard. And you thought the reprieve would be the first game right out of the bye week. The Commanders look pretty good. So that whole back half of that schedule outside of the Browns right now, because the Browns look terrible, looks pretty hard. But that's still a divisional game, and those are always obviously tough ones. So Steelers need to stack wins here the next 3 weeks, and 3 very winnable games against the Jets, who just fired their coach. The Giants do not look very good, and this Raiders team that benched Gardner Minshew, their starting quarterback, for Aiden O'Connell. They still don't know who's going to start there. Devontae Adams is out, probably. He wants a trade. There are so many different things. Christian Wilkins, their star defensive tackle, is hurt and probably out. Max Crosby is a high ankle sprain. He'll probably play, but he's not fully healthy. There are a lot of things working in their favor in this game, so they should win this game. This has to be a win for them. Really, they should win the next 3 games. I think that's something to look at for the Steelers. But yeah, I think the panic is definitely setting in, and I think it's setting in partially not even just because they've lost the last 2 games. I think the Pickens stuff hasn't helped. Just because the offense looks so dire already. To have your best playmaker embroiled in this, it's not great, right?
What is going on with Pickens? When you cut through this load management explanation, what do you think is going on with Pickens?
There's a few things. First of all, the load management stuff is so coach speak. It's not even funny. He compares this to Cam Hayward and TJ Watt and all these things. Folks, there is not a wide receiver in that room that can really even hold a candle to George Pickens. It doesn't exist. Yes, they have over the first 4 games before this one, they had come in and started to decrease his snaps in 12 and 13 personnel in their multiple tight end packages, but not to this extent. He played 34 snaps in this game. He played 59% of the snaps. Calvin Austin and Van Jefferson played more than him. While that had happened before, Van Jefferson had played more than George Pickens before in games. It had not happened to this extent. George Pickens was always, above 65%, up near 70%. I think he should be playing more because you look at how other star receivers are used around the NFL, like Justin Jefferson or whoever you want to put out there. They play, 80, 90% of the snaps. George Pickens should be doing the same. He's just too dynamic. So I think part of this is a coaching issue. I think that has been something that has been existed for 5 games, but not to this extent. The other part is, though, and this was kind of revealed by Tomlin, Tomlin saying that he didn't really have an issue with his effort overall. He thinks his behavior is getting better. Basically confirmed there had been a meeting about the behavior where that was how he showed his frustrations on the sideline, slamming his helmet, or yanking Jordan Lewis's face mask at the end of the game. Tomlin basically said he wasn't aware of the eye black that said always effing open on it across. I don't necessarily care as much about the eye black part of this. George is a confident guy. Whatever. The face mask, the frustration on the sidelines, not great. And then I think what really drove it home was watching the film. He's just not, like, you look at what he's doing in all of his routes, he just is not going full speed through a lot of the routes. And so someone asked him if the route running, the intensity in which he runs his routes is part of the load management. And Tomlin basically said yes. And here's the thing. If you put that on the surface, it's like, okay, it's an easy way to cover for your guy. Don't blast him to the media. Don't torch him to the media. But if you know Tomlin, you know how to dissect Tomlin coach speak, that means pretty simply that Pickens' effort on those routes or whatever, his lack of intensity is a big reason why he only played 34 snaps. It is a big part of why he did not play as much as he had previously played. And so really, if you want to put it into simple terms, the way I would say it is, yes, that was part of the reasoning for why he didn't play more than 34 snaps. He doesn't run routes hard, so he's not playing as much. And you can see it. Then the play's going away from him and he's not in the route concept. You see him barely jogging off the line of scrimmage. There's one rep that I posted where that is the very thing. Now, he probably wasn't getting the ball either, but there's that backside over route that sometimes can become an outlet if you need it, and Pickens wouldn't have been there for it. You saw one of the targets where late in the game on what would have been the game-winning drive had they stopped them, was a play action shot to Pickens that Fields on live, it looked like an overthrow, and it may have been either way, but Pickens kind of jogged on the route. He wasn't putting in full effort. This is not something new, by the way. This is not a Dallas game phenomenon. He had been doing this for years, actually. It's not been even a first 4 games phenomenon. So, yeah, he's not, going 100% on some of these routes. And so, we talked about this last year with the Jaylen Warren block, when they were in Indianapolis and he didn't block for Jaylen Warren. Tomlin basically saying he doesn't do blocking in this offense, which is why he is not in those 12 and 13 personnel packages, which is why you see Calvin Austin, Scotty Miller, and Van Jefferson. And so there are just so many layers to peel back. There's part of it that I think is also the coaching staff's fault, because I don't think, I think Pickens is a guy, he's not low maintenance, right? He is a higher maintenance player. And part of the reason he's probably disinterested is that they are not drawing up very good plays for him. They are not doing a lot of things. So I think there's problems here. First of all, they're pulling him out of packages when they can't afford to, because they don't have the playmakers in the passing game to do it. Two, he's not putting in full effort into some of these routes that he's running. It's not all the routes, but it's some of them. You can go back, watch the tape. He's not putting in full effort, and even Mike Tomlin won't admit that. He basically did through the coach speak point of view. And then third, there's the coaching problem, which is they're not giving their best playmaker very good looks to make plays, and they just aren't. And so that's another part. So there's three issues. Part of it's Pickens. Part of it is the coaching staff not getting Pickens the looks that he probably should be getting. And then third is playing Pickens when they should be playing Pickens. Like, they're not playing him, when they should be. So there's a lot going on here with George Pickens. And he is the best playmaker on this offense. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. He's the best playmaker on this offense. They need another receiver so badly. It's so clear that they do. And they haven't been targeting Pickens enough. They haven't been drawing plays up for him enough. And he also hasn't been putting in enough effort on some of these plays to really also warrant the coaching staff saying, yes, let's draw these up for him. So it's multiple issues here.
Everything that you just said, all of those maturation issues with George Pickens, it sounds like, to me, is a great argument for the leadership, the veteran leadership of a Russell Wilson to come in. Now, I'm not knocking Justin Fields. I'm knocking the conservative game plan that has continued through Canada and now to Arthur Smith, and that probably comes top down from Tomlin, because that's the way he wants to win. He built this team to be good on defense and to score enough points to squeak by in these games. But everything you said about Pickens, who is the best playmaker on offense, he's he could be a superstar. Sounds like an argument for Russell Wilson. And you heard you were at the game, but the NBC commentators were talking about, hey, he is gonna, they were talking like they knew something, and there's a conspiracy theory that Tomlin sort of signaled in their production meeting with NBC that it's, Wilson is going to be stepping in there at some point soon. And you mentioned this 3-game stretch that's highly winnable. What is the status with Russell Wilson vis-a-vis Justin Fields?
Russell Wilson is going to do a full participation in practice tomorrow. So that's going to be the first time we have seen him be a full participant in practice since he suffered this injury, re-aggravated this injury. Boy, it was 5-6 weeks ago at this point. So it's been a long time since Russell Wilson aggravated that calf. Listen, he posted a video on Instagram on Saturday of him running on an anti-gravity treadmill, which in and of itself means that he is not putting full weight on his calf. So that's something. I have not seen him on the field do a rollout. I have not seen him do any type of sprinting. I have not seen him do any type of cutting. I have seen him go under center and do handoffs. I have seen him every time when they go into those rollouts, he just takes a snap out of empty turns and throws it. He does not do anything that would stress his calf significantly. My guess is tomorrow is the first time we're going to see him do all those things. And so let's see if he can get through it. Calf injuries can act up again, right? Now, Russell Wilson, in terms of playing a football game, probably has been cleared for 2 or 3 weeks, probably, somewhere around there. But to effectively play as Russell Wilson is where they're going to need to get. Mm-hmm. Can he protect himself? Can he run around like he does? Like you know how Russell Wilson plays if you've ever watched him. He runs around the pocket. He tries to extend plays. Can they still have the QB run game be part of this? If Justin Fields comes out, they don't want to lose the ability to let the quarterback run the football, because Russ can run the football still. He's not the athlete he once was, but can you still give him a quarterback power or something like that on 3rd and 3? Can you still do that? That's going to be a big part of this. So can Russ do all those things? He's going to have to check off all these boxes this week. And we'll see. Right now, he's working with the twos. And Mike Tomlin basically said he's working with the twos to not disrupt Justin Fields' preparation. Now, I don't know about you, but that to me certainly sounds like another Justin Fields start is coming down the pipeline this week.
Okay.
And so would not surprise me if this week it is Justin Fields starting and Russell Wilson being the backup. Now, that doesn't mean that Mike Tomlin's going to come out Friday and name Justin Fields QB1 for the rest of the year. That doesn't mean that. But what it means is Russ is starting to take steps to where Mike's going to have to make that declaration. My guess is that declaration will come next week before their game against the Jets, not this game against the Raiders. I do expect Mike Tomlin to ride with Justin Fields this week, but we'll see.
Okay, and the declaration you're expecting for next week is what? Clarify that just so I understand. What would be the declaration on the quarterbacks coming next
Who will
week?
start at quarterback moving forward? Because they both theoretically, as long as Fields obviously doesn't get hurt this upcoming week, because I think he's going to start, who will start for the rest of the season or at least moving forward, right? So that's what I think is going to come out. But the fact that Wilson is working with the twos, the fact that he still has all these hurdles to clear, and the fact that Justin Fields is going to get QB1 reps to not disrupt him signals another start this week to me, and we'll see kind of where things go from there. I think Fields has a great game and they win. We've talked about this for weeks. I still think they're going to ride Justin Fields if he's playing well, but Russell Wilson, as you said, does have that veteran leadership argument that you could use if you wanted to bring that in. Now, I don't think he solely, for example, would fix George Pickens' ails. I think that's a coaching issue as much as it is a George Pickens issue. I'm not sure. I'll say this. I don't think George Pickens' issue is that Justin Fields is quarterback. I don't think that's an issue.
But do you think if he came up under a veteran like a Ben Roethlisberger, we'd be seeing as much antics out of him as we're seeing these 3 years now going on?
Probably not, because Big Ben was an elite quarterback and he would have so many targets and plays designed for him in a Big Ben offense. Big Ben was the type of leader where he could change the play at the line, change your route at the line. If he saw this look, okay, George, go run a slant, and I'm going to target you. I don't think Justin has that type of freedom. Maybe Russ would, and maybe that's where the argument comes in, right? Russ could get into the offense and say, oh, we see single high. George, you were supposed to run, let's say, a hitch. Okay, go deep, and I'm just going to throw that ball to you. I'm not sure if Justin has that type of freedom yet to do that. Because you remember when Ben would just signal routes out in the back. Russ does that, and I haven't seen Justin do that. Now, Justin changes protections and can change plays overall, but I'm not sure he can change routes within plays, et cetera, just yet. I don't think he's earned that level of trust. Like he said last week that if a run play is called, he cannot change the run play. He can't change out of the run play. He could probably change the side or the leverage of something, but he can't change the actual play itself. So I don't think he has that level of QB trust yet. I think Russell Wilson might. So maybe that's the argument. But I don't think George Pickens in and of himself would be, wouldn't have these issues. Now I'm sure GP, he's a very talented player. And I think this is somewhat because I think Pickens is a really smart dude. Like I've talked with George enough. Like some people will call him dumb, and he's just not. He's a smart guy. So some of this, might be like a form of protest to him, basically saying, get me the ball, get me another receiver, whatever it might be, whatever George wants. I'm sure he's communicated with Mike Tomlin what he would like, whether that is for Arthur Smith to dial up certain plays for him, whether that is to get another receiver to help him, all these different things. But that is part of the whole calculus here. And I'm not sure that the quarterback changing from Russ to Justin, this version of Russ, I should say, is going to change so much. If he had Big Ben, his peak, sure. But I think where they're at right now, I'm not sure it would change anything.
No, that's a fair point. Speaking of smart, I heard Pickens got an endorsement offer from the Waffle House after the eye black. Always effing open, right? Isn't that their logo? I digress, of course. There was a lot of blowback after this game and, of course, the Indy game on the defensive coordinator, Terrell Austin, saying that the Steelers should have never got rid of Brian Flores, and that the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. Now, of course, you mentioned the injuries to the Vegas Raiders, but I mean, we're at the edge in terms of edge rushers and the shortage there. I mean, why we're having so many problems on third downs, and these drives when the game is on the line, we let Dallas go down the field. What's going on with this defense?
This defense is having trouble right now with a few things. For one, as you mentioned, the edge rushers just getting hurt. Now they're down Highsmith, Herbig, and Leal. TJ Watt's the last man standing, if you will, the top four. Jeremiah Moon they have there. And they're going to have to look at some of the depth options. Isaiah Loudermilk is apparently going to get some playing out there. He's an interior guy, going to play outside. And then they have two guys on the practice squad, Ade Ogundeji and Ekuliota as well. So we'll see kind of where that goes. That's a concern. Certainly after Herbig exited and then Leal got hurt, I thought the last drive, a big part of that was the fact that they could get no pressure at all. They were double and triple teaming TJ Watt. And Dak was kind of drifting away from TJ Watt. So I thought that was a huge part of that, especially on the touchdown. Just look at how much time he had for that to develop. If Herbig's in there, I don't think he has as much time to do that. So you're going to have to see more blitzing. But I think a big part of the issue is there's just so many coverage busts. I mean, so much miscommunication on the back end of the defense. They've tried to mix up coverages. And the reason I say this is there were a lot of coverage busts in the second half, specifically against not against Dallas, yes, but also against Indianapolis. Because against Indianapolis with the first half, remember when the Colts were just moving down this field at will, right? Steelers sat in most of their cover 3 stuff during that. Well, over the past 6 quarters, they've added more, cover 6, cover 2, man coverage, just a lot of different looks, and they've been disguising, moving guys around. So they've basically made the defense more complicated in an effort to become less predictable. But when they were predictable, you saw what Indianapolis did. They put 17 on them. And so that's the issue. So the issue is when they go super simple, the Steelers haven't been able to do anything because the Colts exposed that. But when they went to this more complicated kind of integrated defense, now they can't communicate and they're busting coverages. And so it's like a double-wielded thing, and the pass rush isn't getting home as much anymore because you're injured. And so all these things kind of connect together. And so they got to find a happy medium where it's simple enough to where these things aren't going to kill them. And more importantly, they're going to have to understand up front what's going to need to come because they're going to blitz a lot more this week probably with all these injuries, which adds another layer of communication completely, right? Some guy doesn't fill a hole that a blitzer left, and that guy is wide open for a slant or something like that. That can absolutely happen. So there's going to have to be a lot of communication. I think they're a little scared to play man coverage too. They've started to bust it out a little bit, and you saw it a little bit when they went at Beanie Bishop. He's not performed well the last 2 weeks in the slot. Undrafted free agent out of West Virginia. They have targeted 31. Just look, they looked for where 31 was. If you look at the 4th down play call before they called the timeout, so this is before obviously the Tolbert touchdown. You saw them put CeeDee Lamb right over Beanie Bishop. That ball was going straight to 88 against 31. He is the mismatch the teams are kind of circling. So when they do go to man and they try and get out of their zones, teams are kind of circling him and saying, okay, well, we're going to force you out of man now because you don't want that guy singled up against this dude. And so that's kind of the issue. Josh Downs did the same thing against the Steelers in the second half last week. And they put everybody on Downs last week, but he beat everyone. And so there are some issues that they have to figure out in the back end. I think just being better at communication. If they can communicate and get the calls to each other, it fixes about 80% of their issues. It does, because I think Dallas had between, communication busts had at least 150 yards passing just on busts. The Colts had 2 touchdowns on coverage busts. So if you fix those things, it probably fixes itself for the most part.
No, that's a great analysis, how the NFL is like a hungry wolf. It spots the weakness, and then it dictates, how you're going to play. by circling Beanie Bishop and then blowing up your man coverage like that by putting Lamb on him. I mean, it just blows the Steelers back, like you said, into the zone. And in terms of the communication issue, we know that Patrick Queen is wearing the green dot. So is he part of the problem? Where is the communication breaking down? I want to blame somebody. Who do we blame for this?
It's a secondary. And what you have to understand is the initial play call goes into Patrick Queen's helmet, and he relays it to everybody. But within a play, there can be 4 or 5 different other calls between guys. So there can be a call between Minka and Elliott. There can be a call between Queen and Wilson. There can be a call between Jackson and Bishop. There could be a call between all these different players. The only call that you really don't have to change a ton of is the front. The front can communicate with each other. They slide over one gap. It's not really that hard. But the linebackers have their own calls within each other. The safeties can have their own calls within each other. A safety in a corner can have their own. So there are different calls within each. And we've seen a lot of the breakdowns between a few players. Beanie Bishop has had a few busts in zone. He had a huge bust against the Colts on their final touchdown. Remember, the tight end leaked out wide open on a mesh. He thought they were in man. Everybody else was playing zone. Touchdown. Minkah Fitzpatrick and both corners have had some really odd miscommunications, or it's like they don't know that Minkah's going to play the middle of the field as hard as he has been. Minkah's been hunting the big play. I can see it on film. He's been trying to rob the middle of the field and catch a quarterback napping, and the quarterbacks have just been looking off to the sideline and hitting those deep routes. Herbert hit one for the touchdown. Quentin Johnson, their lone touchdown in that game. The Colts almost hit one. Flacco overthrew Adonai Mitchell. And then when you looked, I think the Broncos almost hit one too. They missed it. It was a deep pass, but a similar thing happened. And then you looked, obviously, the 48-yarder on 3rd and 4 right before the half where no one was in the direction of Jalen Tolbert. Minkah Fitzpatrick and Dante Jackson were just nowhere to be found. That is a huge part of it. So I don't know if it's a Minkah thing. I don't know if Minkah's communicating with guys enough, how he's going to try and play this, and that basically the fix to Dante Jackson and Joey Porter Jr. not getting enough depth on cover 2 is they're not riding these guys up the sideline enough and putting their hands on them. And because they doesn't feel like they know that Minkah is going to play that middle of the field and then try to bait the quarterback, because that's kind of what looks like it's happening. And the quarterbacks are just hitting the guys on the outside because Minkah is trying to kind of double play it, right? He's kind of trying to do that. And so that's been an issue for them. They've had some big-time issues with motion. I don't know why, but just basic motion stuff. There's one play on the first drive, John. You probably remember this. They send the tight end out wide, and nobody follows him. Dak just hits him right up the sideline for 15 yards. I mean, someone has to follow the guy in motion. The Colts did this super well, where they sent their slot receiver, Josh Downs, in motion, and the Steelers weren't pushing anybody to him because they were playing a lot of cover 3. So you see the settling down in open zones, or the corners weren't communicating in 3-by-1 sets. This is another thing that they've been doing. They've been putting guys in stacks in 3-by-1 sets, which forces all 3 defenders there to communicate with each other. It's usually Porter, Jackson, and Bishop, or Elliott, or someone like that. And there's a play, you probably remember this, where the tight end, Jake Ferguson, is wide open on an out route. If you watch it, there are 2 men on the rail route right in the middle of the field, and then there are 2 men on the corner route. Minkah and Bishop are on the corner. Queen and Jackson are on that drag coming across the middle of the field. No one's on the out. 2 guys thought they were playing man. The other 2 thought they were playing zone. And so it's everybody. Like, everyone's got to communicate better. I don't know if they need to put in a system that says, this is what we do here. We got to communicate here. But it is basic stuff here where they are just, there's 2 guys on this guy. This guy isn't getting enough depth because this guy's playing it that way. There's just a lack of cohesion with that group. And there's a lot of new. Sean Elliott, Dante Jackson, Beanie Bishop, all new players. I get it. But it's like, it looks like sometimes the players don't know how the other player is going to play it, or they don't know the playbook itself. It's really odd. So they got to clean that up because, again, these busts are just killing them. They allowed at least 150 yards in coverage busts against Dallas. The first drive of the game, remember, Lamb caught the ball on the sideline. Bishop plays super soft and hangs towards the flat, and Casey's not over there in time because Casey's playing more towards the middle. And you look on the other side, and then you see Edmonds and Porter doing it, and Edmonds is at the sticks. If Beanie had been at the sticks, it wouldn't have been complete. There's just a lot of different things going on. It's all communication, though, on the back end right now. They got beat a few times. Truly, they got beat a few times, but it wasn't super often. A lot of what got them beat in this game was miscommunication, and then by the end of the game, I think they were just really tired because the offense hadn't been on the field a lot. The defense had played a lot, and they got kind of worn down.
Hey, great analysis, and I love the way you just take play after play after play, just from your film study. And obviously, the Steelers are seeing that on film. The players are seeing that on film. The coaches, we got to clean that up. We have to clean that up. Let's close this by going back, like talking about that offense not being on the field enough. What's the status of our running game? Are we getting Patterson and Jaylen Warren back? And a question to ponder: if we get another anemic, slow start on offense, given the fact that Russell Wilson would be the number 2, is there any chance we could see a surprise change at halftime at the QB1 position?
The running game is it's in a place. There's no doubt about that. No, Cordero Patterson and Jaylen Warren sound like they're both going to be out again, so it's probably going to be Najee Harris, Jonathan Ward, and Aaron Shanklin again. But man, the run game this week actually wasn't that bad. You looked at it, and they had their best success rate of the entire season. They had a 50.3 success rate, John. That was third best in the NFL this week. Of course, they only had 92 yards to show for it, but they had a pretty good run game going, at least on first down. I think they got 4 more yards on 70% of their runs on first down in this game, and I think 3 of those that they didn't were one of them was before the half where they were just running out clock. And the other was on the goal line. So,
the weird part, like that first down success rate, I did notice that it didn't help them sustain the drives, though, did it?
Right, it didn't. And it's interesting. The Steelers, one of the things that I talked about on here and on Twitter had been that I really wanted them to open up the passing game on early downs. They did. It just sucked. It just sucked. And there's a big correlation between George Pickens playing and not playing here, too. A lot of those first down passes that they had were out of 12 and 13 personnel, and your 2 receivers were Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin. And that's a lot of where they didn't get successful downs, and so they were already in 2nd and 10. And so that's a lot of where that came from. Their passing success rate on first down was like 20%, which is obviously terrible. And so, like, the George Pickens stuff comes into this too. Like, big part of why they weren't successful on early downs. And that's why I say, even, I do think it was a little bit of a punishment, to take him out of those more. Like, the offense just can't handle it. It just can't handle it. Even the opening drive of the second half, he was out for all 6 plays. They were in heavy for that all those plays, and they didn't move the ball. And then, of course, he comes in, both touchdown drives, he is on the field for the entire drive. He has to play. Like, he has to play. They cannot handle him being off the field. And so that's a big part of it. The run game schematics still, I still don't love how they're using Najee Harris. The run game itself is baffling to me at times because they passed the ball on 1st and 10 on the one sequence on the opening drive. Remember this. They passed the ball on the first down. It's not complete because they took the shot to Darnell Washington off play action. The next 2 are runs to Jonathan Ward and then a 3rd and 8 run to Aaron Shanklin. And you don't go for it. On 4th down, you kick the field goal. People are probably not talking about that enough. If they go for it and then end up scoring a touchdown on that drive, they win the game. You got to play aggressive. So that's Tomlin costing his team there. That's Arthur Smith going a little bit into a shell and running the ball there. The other thing that was really interesting to me about the run game and the schematics on offense, I talked with a few players yesterday in the locker room. They were expecting a lot of blitzes that the Cowboys used, these double A-gap mugs. They were expecting things, and that's part of why that pitch was called to Shanklin, because they would have gotten right outside of him and would have had a huge gain probably. They didn't see it. They saw it once all game. The Cowboys threw out all their pressure packages that they usually use, and copied what the Colts did. They copied what the Colts did. And what that tells you is it doesn't really matter what teams are doing anymore on film because they're just going to watch what the previous game did. There's a blueprint out on how to beat you,
Right.
And they're just going to run that. They're going to blitz the nickel off the edge. They're going to blitz the safety down. They're going to do these different things in the run game. They're going to float an extra defender down to stop your play action crossers. The Steelers are averaging 3.4 yards per play on play action. It is the worst in the league by 2 full yards. It is not even close. It is the worst play action football in the league. Now, they should have had a huge play to Connor Hayward. He dropping that football obviously on the first drive. But the play action game not being good is a huge part of why this offense sucks. And Russell Wilson's probably not going to fix that. What Russell Wilson maybe could do is give them more stability in the drop back passing game. But Fields has actually been good in the drop back passing game this year, which is throwing everything kind of out of the wayside because he had always been a better play action passer than a drop back passer. So it's like, I don't know if Russ brings a ton of tangible differences other than the veteran presence and being able to change things at the line, shift that. So maybe I don't think he'd be benched in the first half unless it's like truly disastrous, like 2 or 3 turnovers and they're down big. So I don't think we would see that. But we would
need a Mitch Trubisky level of catastrophe.
Right. Like it would have to be awful. Okay. It would really have to be awful for I think it to fully happen then. But I just look at the Steelers right now and I say, man, I think they go out onto the field. I know we talk about, personnel issues. They definitely need another wide receiver. The O-line's obviously so banged up. It's not even funny. They're missing their top 2 backs. But I think they walk out onto a field every single week and are almost at a coaching disadvantage right from the start. This goes back to what I'm talking about with Pickens, and it extends to Freiermuth and Harris. These are your 3 best players offensively right now because Warren and Patterson are out. Where are the schemed plays to Pat Freiermuth? Oh, you know what jump-started the offense? The 19-yard slant route that was designed for Pat Freiermuth. And then what helped them get another touchdown? Oh, the mesh play to George Pickens that went 22 yards and got them down to the 6-yard line. Start designing plays for your top 2 passing options. Design more plays for George Pickens. Design more plays for Pat Freiermuth. I'm not condoning George Pickens' actions because they're definitely a problem and he can't be jogging out there. But dude, they don't put anything good up for him. They got to start designing plays for George Pickens that get him into advantageous spots. He is your best wide receiver, and it is not close. Pat Freiermuth is your second best option in the passing game, and he's not getting a ton of targets. Najee Harris is by far your best running back, and you are forcing him to run outside zone and crack tosses all game. That's not his game. And so when I talk about slow starts and issues with the offense, almost all of it, it's not completely all of it, but about 90% of this is just coaching. The schematics of the offense stink. And that's a big part of why they're not playing well right now. They do need personnel upgrades to that wide receiver room. But the coaching in the first half is so mind-numbingly conservative and doesn't actually tee up your best playmakers to make plays. You're teeing up stuff for Connor Hayward more than you are Pat Freiermuth or George Pickens in the first half. Look, Connor's a good dude, but come on. Start teeing these 2 up. George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth should have a minimum combined 15 targets every single game.
Hey, that, my friends, was a damning indictment of the coaching with the Steelers offense, and it's continued under Matt Canada and Arthur Smith. And the constant being the highly conservative Mike Tomlin, who always tells us not to live in our fears, yet that offense looks like it's full of fear, even as we're approaching Halloween. And Nick, you're approaching Vegas, and you're going to be putting some money down, not on the Steelers, because he has to be impartial, but maybe when he hits the blackjack table. But we'll be looking forward to your coverage all week and up and through the game, where you're always on social media with some great analysis from what he's seeing up in the booth. So check it out on PennLive, and also check out Nick on Twitter. And of course, we'll be back here next Tuesday with the big show, the Steelers Breakdown with Nick Farabaugh.